Today we're ranking the most consequential generals of the Second World War. From the commander whose collapse handed France to the Germans in 6 weeks, to the soldier who broke the German army on the steppes of Russia and finished the war in the ruins of Berlin. A note before we begin. Ranking generals is dangerous work. Reputations have been built and destroyed for 80 years. Some of these men were brilliant in one campaign and disastrous in another. Some made decisions that saved thousands of lives. Others made decisions that cost thousands. This ranking is based on what they actually achieved in command, not what their country's propaganda said about them. Comments will be open at the end. Bring your arguments. D tier, the worst. The generals whose failures changed history. Rank 8. Maurice Gamelin, France. Let's start at the bottom. Maurice Gamelin was the supreme commander of French forces in May 1940, the most critical month in modern French history. Picture this. You are 67 years old. You have spent your entire career preparing for a defensive war along the Maginot Line, a line of fortifications that the Germans had no intention of attacking. You have refused to install radios in your command headquarters, communicating with subordinates by motorcycle dispatch rider in an age of mechanized warfare. You have positioned your best mobile units in Belgium, leaving the Ardennes forest defended by reserve formations, because you believe, on the advice of your own staff, that German armor cannot pass through it. On the 10th of May 1940, German armor passed through it. Gamelin's response to the catastrophe was almost beyond belief. He did not visit the front. He did not assert command. He spent the first 4 days of the invasion in his headquarters at the Château de Vincennes, issuing vague orders by telephone while German panzers raced across northern France. By the time he was sacked on the 19th of May, the French army was already broken. Gamelin lived until 1958. He never publicly accepted responsibility for the disaster. The fall of France was not entirely his fault. The political and military failures that led to 1940 had been building for 2 decades. But on the day the war came, the man in command froze, and France fell. Rank 7. Ettore Bastico, Italy. Italy's commander in North Africa from 1941 to 1943. Ettore Bastico was, on paper, Erwin Rommel's superior officer. In reality, he was the man Rommel openly mocked and routinely ignored. Bastico's nickname among the German staff was Bombastico, a play on his name that translates roughly to bombastic. He issued grand strategic plans from his headquarters in Tripoli and Rome, while Rommel actually fought the war in the desert. When Rommel made a critical request for supplies or reinforcements, Bastico delayed. When Rommel attempted to coordinate operations, Bastico's headquarters could not match the pace of mobile warfare. The Italian Royal Army in North Africa was full of brave soldiers and competent junior officers. They were defeated at the top by a command structure that could not function. Bastico is not the worst general Italy produced in the war, but he was in command at the worst moment, and his failures contributed directly to the destruction of the Italian 10th Army and the eventual loss of the entire North African theater. A general whose authority on paper bore no relationship to his usefulness in the field. C tier. The mediocre. Generals whose reputations exceeded their results. Rank 6. Bernard Montgomery, Britain. This is a controversial pick. The comments section will fight about it. Bernard Law Montgomery, victor of El Alamein, commander of the 21st Army Group from D-Day to the German surrender, the most famous British general of the war. So why is he in C tier? Because Montgomery's reputation depends entirely on Second Alamein in October 1942, a battle in which he outnumbered Rommel 2-1 in men, 3-1 in tanks, and 5-1 in artillery, and still took 12 days to break through. Montgomery was a master of set-piece battles fought with overwhelming numerical superiority. He was meticulous, careful, and personally brave. He was also slow, arrogant, and incapable of operating cooperatively with American commanders who outranked him. The disaster of Operation Market Garden in September 1944, which cost the lives of thousands of Allied paratroopers attempting a bridge too far at Arnhem, was Montgomery's plan. The slow pursuit of the German army after Normandy, which allowed thousands of Wehrmacht troops to escape across the Seine, was Montgomery's responsibility. He was a competent army group commander whose reputation has been inflated by British wartime propaganda and by his own relentless self-promotion. He won, but he won the slow way, with the most resources, against opponents who were already losing. Rank 5. Mark Clark, United States. The American general who liberated Rome 2 days before D-Day overshadowed his moment of glory. Mark Clark commanded the 5th United States Army in Italy from 1943 to the end of the war. He was charming, photogenic, and politically gifted. He was also strategically erratic. The Italian campaign under Clark became a grinding attritional disaster that consumed Allied lives for marginal strategic gain. The decision to drive on Rome in May 1944, rather than cut off and destroy the retreating German 10th Army, has been criticized by historians for 80 years. Clark wanted the publicity of liberating Rome. He got it. The German army he allowed to escape fought on for almost another full year, killing thousands of Allied soldiers in the slow advance up the Italian peninsula. A competent general whose ego cost lives. B tier. The capable. Solid commanders who got the job done. Rank 4. Omar Bradley, United States. The general's general. Omar Bradley commanded the 1st United States Army in Normandy, and later the 12th Army Group, the largest American formation ever fielded. He was quiet, methodical, and trusted by the men who served under him. The press called him the GI's general because he visited frontline units constantly and refused the theatrical posturing of his contemporaries. Bradley's record is solid. He commanded the breakout from Normandy in Operation Cobra. He coordinated the encirclement of German forces in the Falaise Pocket. He managed the Battle of the Bulge with calm professionalism. His weakness was caution. Bradley rarely took the bold risks that George Patton, his subordinate, made his trademark. The Falaise Pocket itself was nearly closed too late, allowing tens of thousands of German troops to escape. But across the European theater, Bradley did the unglamorous work of coordinating millions of men, and he did it without spectacular failure. A solid, dependable commander. Not legendary, just genuinely good. Rank 3. Erwin Rommel, Germany. The Desert Fox. The most famous German general of the war, and one of the most admired by his enemies. Erwin Rommel commanded the Afrika Korps in North Africa from 1941 to 1943 and led Army Group B during the Normandy campaign. He was a tactical genius. His operations in the desert, particularly at Tobruk and Gazala, are still studied in military academies. He led from the front, often in personal danger, and his soldiers trusted him absolutely. He treated Allied prisoners with such consistent decency that Winston Churchill once spoke of him in Parliament with grudging respect. So why is he only at number 3? Because Rommel's reputation rests on tactical brilliance, not strategic understanding. He repeatedly outran his supply lines in the desert. He failed to grasp the operational big picture in Normandy, defending the wrong beaches with the wrong reserves. He served a regime he eventually understood was monstrous, and his attempts to oppose Hitler came too late and ended with his forced suicide in 1944. A magnificent tactical commander whose loyalty to a corrupt cause prevented him from becoming the legend his abilities deserved. A tier, the Great. Rank 2. George S. Patton, United States. The most aggressive Allied general of the war. George Smith Patton, Jr. commanded the 3rd United States Army from August 1944 to the end of the war in Europe, and in those 9 months, he conducted one of the fastest sustained advances in military history. Patton's 3rd Army covered more ground, captured more prisoners, and liberated more territory than any other American formation. His relief of Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge, swinging his army 90 degrees in winter conditions to attack the German flank, is considered one of the great operational achievements of the entire war. He was vulgar, theatrical, profane, and frequently insubordinate. He slapped 2 soldiers suffering from combat fatigue in Sicily and nearly ended his career. He believed in reincarnation and claimed he had fought as a Roman legionary in previous lives. He was, by every measure, an extraordinary human being and an extraordinary general. Patton sits at number 2 because he was a magnificent army commander but never held the strategic responsibilities of the man at number 1. Given the chance, he might have been the greatest general of the war. He was killed in a car accident in Germany in December 1945, 8 months after the war ended, before he could write the memoirs that would have settled his place in history. S tier. Legendary. The general who broke the German army. Rank 1. Georgy Konstantinovich Zhukov, Soviet Union. And now we arrive at the top. Marshal of the Soviet Union, Georgy Zhukov, the man who saved Moscow in December 1941. The man who organized the encirclement of the German Sixth Army at Stalingrad in November 1942. The man who planned and commanded the Soviet offensive at Kursk in July 1943, the largest tank battle in human history. The man who coordinated Operation Bagration in the summer of 1944, which destroyed the German Army Group Center in 8 weeks. The man who personally accepted the German surrender in Berlin in May 1945. Zhukov fought and won on a scale that no Western general ever approached. The forces under his strategic command numbered in the millions. The casualties he inflicted on the German army outnumbered the combined losses Germany suffered in every other theater of the war combined. He was ruthless. He was brutal with his own soldiers. The Soviet victories he engineered cost millions of Soviet lives, and he accepted those costs without flinching. He was also a brilliant operational commander, a master of deception, deep battle theory, and combined arms warfare. The German generals who fought him on the Eastern Front respected him in a way they respected almost no other Allied commander. Zhukov earns the top tier, the way the Mosin Nagant and the PPSH earned their places in our other rankings. Not through elegance, not through refinement, through scale, through results, and through the simple, brutal fact that he beat the German army when nobody else could. That is the ranking. From Maurice Gamelin, the commander who froze when his country needed him most, to Georgy Zhukov, the marshal who broke the Wehrmacht and finished the war in the rubble of Berlin. If you enjoyed this video, the one on screen now is for you. Subscribe, hit the bell, and tell us in the comments which general you would have ranked differently. We read every single one.